I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who checks her husband's bank statements. But then again, I never thought he'd be the kind of man who'd secretly fund his ex-wife's life behind my back. The day I discovered the truth started like any other Tuesday, until it wasn't. I was sitting at our kitchen island, sipping coffee while sorting through a stack of mail I'd neglected for weeks. That's when I noticed the envelope from a bank I didn't recognize. Inside was a mortgage statement addressed to my husband, Aaron. For a property I'd never heard of. My name was nowhere on it. Now, let me rewind a bit. Aaron and I had been married for 3 years, what I thought were 3 honest, loving years. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco where we were both speakers. He was brilliant, funny, and seemed refreshingly transparent about his past. Yes, he'd been married before to a woman named Vanessa, but that was ancient history according to him. They'd been divorced for 4 years when we met, no kids involved, a clean break he called it. I never pushed for details because, frankly, I didn't care about his past relationship as long as it was truly over. We built what I thought was a solid life together in Seattle. I worked as a UX designer for a major tech company. He ran his own software consultancy. We had a beautiful condo overlooking Lake Union, a small but close circle of friends, and plans to start trying for a baby next year. I trusted him completely. That's what makes betrayal so devastating, isn't it? The blind spot you never knew you had. It's probably just some clerical error, I told myself as I stared at that mortgage statement. But my stomach was already twisting into knots. The property address was in Portland, where Aaron had lived with Vanessa before they're divorced. I called the bank, pretending to be a confused spouse wondering about this mysterious account. "Oh yes, Mrs. Reynolds," the cheerful customer service rep said. "That mortgage has been active for 7 years, with consistent monthly payments of $2,100 directly from your joint checking account." 7 years. Which meant it predated our relationship. But the payments were coming from our account now. I hung up and immediately pulled up our bank statements on my laptop. There they were, monthly transfers labeled innocuously as investment property, dating back to when we first combined our finances. I had always assumed it was some real estate venture he'd mentioned in passing. I never questioned it because I trusted him. What a joke. My hands were shaking as I dialed Aaron's number. When he didn't pick up, I texted, "We need to talk. Tonight. It's important." His response came quickly, "Everything okay? In meetings all day. See you at dinner." I spent the rest of the day in a fog, cycling between disbelief, anger, and a strange, detached curiosity. Was she still living there? Was he visiting her? Were they still sleeping together? My mind created increasingly painful scenarios with each passing hour. By the time Aaron walked through our front door that evening, I'd moved past shock and landed firmly in cold fury. I was sitting at the dining table, the mortgage statement and printed bank records spread out before me like evidence at a crime scene. "Hey babe, what's the emergency?" He kissed the top of my head as he walked past, dropping his laptop bag on the counter. When I didn't respond, he turned and finally noticed my expression. His eyes flicked down to the papers on the table, the color drained from his face. "Rachel, I can explain." "Please do." My voice was eerily calm even to my own ears. "Explain why you've been paying your ex-wife's mortgage for our entire relationship." He sat down heavily across from me. "It's not what you think." "What I think," I said, my voice gaining edge, "is that you've been lying to me for 3 years about financially supporting your ex-wife. What I think is that you've been siphoning money from our joint account, money we earned together, to pay for a house where another woman lives. A woman you were once married to. A woman you claimed was ancient history." Aaron ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. "When Vanessa and I split up, the housing market had crashed. The house was underwater. She couldn't afford to keep it on her own, and we couldn't sell it without taking a massive loss. So you decided to just keep paying for it? Forever? Without telling your new wife?" "It was only supposed to be temporary," he insisted. "Until the market recovered. But then you and I got serious so quickly, And I couldn't figure out how to tell you without making it seem weird. Weird? I repeated, my voice rising. You think paying your ex-wife's mortgage behind your current wife's back is just weird? She's not living there for free, he protested. She pays me rent. It just doesn't cover the full mortgage. I laughed bitterly. Oh, so you're her landlord now? That makes it better? Rachel, please try to understand. Vanessa went through a tough time after our divorce. She lost her job, her mom got sick. I couldn't just throw her out on the street. So instead you lied to me. 4 years. I stood up, needing physical distance between us. How much, Aaron? How much of our money has gone to supporting your ex? He hesitated. About $150,000 over the past 3 years. The room actually spun. We'd been saving for a house of our own. For fertility treatments if we needed them. For our future. And all that time, he'd been building equity in a house with another woman. Does she know about me? I asked suddenly. Aaron looked confused. Of course she knows I remarried. No, I clarified. Does she know that I'm the one helping pay her mortgage? That we could have bought our own house by now if you weren't still financially tied to her? His silence was answer enough. Get out, I whispered. What? Get out. I shouted, surprising myself with the force of it. I can't even look at you right now. Take whatever you need for tonight and go to a hotel. I'll pack up the rest of your things tomorrow. Rachel, you're overreacting. We can work this out. Overreacting? I was incandescent with rage now. You've been lying to me every single day of our marriage. About something huge. What else have you been lying about? Are you still sleeping with her too? Of course not. This is purely financial. Financial infidelity is still infidelity, Aaron. You made a fool of me. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. We argued for another hour. He tried every tactic, defending his actions as noble, minimizing the deception, accusing me of lacking compassion, and finally, when nothing else worked, begging for forgiveness. I stood firm. By midnight, he was gone, and I was alone in our condo, surrounded by the wreckage of what I'd thought was a happy marriage. The next day, I called in sick to work and began the grim task of separating our lives. I boxed up his clothes, books, and personal items with methodical precision, as if physical organization could somehow compensate for my emotional chaos. With each item I packed, my anger crystallized into something harder and more resolute. By evening, our entryway was filled with boxes and garbage bags. I texted Aaron, your things are packed. Pick them up tomorrow between 9 and 11. I won't be here. Then I did something that, in retrospect, was either incredibly petty or perfectly justified, depending on your perspective. I pulled up county property records online and found the Portland address from the mortgage statement. Listed as owners, Aaron Reynolds and Vanessa Reynolds. She hadn't even changed her name back after the divorce. On a whim, or perhaps driven by a need to make this abstract betrayal concrete, I looked up Vanessa Reynolds on social media. I found her easily, a pretty brunette with a wide smile and an active Instagram full of artistic photos, motivational quotes, and pictures of a sleek modern house that must have been the one my husband was paying for. Her profile mentioned she was a wellness coach and yoga instructor. Her latest post showed her celebrating the 5-year anniversary of her studio. So much for the financial hardship story Aaron had fed me. As I scrolled through her life, a life partially subsidized by my income, I noticed frequent appearances by a tall, bearded man tagged as at Marcus C. Wilson. A quick click revealed he was her boyfriend of 2 years. Her captions referred to him as her rock and the love of my life. So while my husband was secretly supporting his ex-wife, she was building a new life with another man, in a house we were paying for. The absurdity of it all struck me like a physical blow. That's when the idea came to me. A perfect, terrible idea born from equal parts vindictiveness and a perverse sense of justice. I clicked on Marcus Wilson's profile. His bio read, architect. Mountain biker. Dog dad to Luna. Recently single and starting over. recently single? But Vanessa's posts with him were current. I dug deeper and found a post from 3 weeks earlier where he'd written a lengthy, raw reflection about his marriage ending after his wife's infidelity. He didn't name names, but it wasn't hard to connect the dots. Vanessa had been Marcus's wife. Now she was dating someone new while still using Marcus's last name, while my husband paid for her house. What a tangled mess. I stared at Marcus's profile photo, a kind-faced man about my age with warm eyes and an easy smile, and made an impulsive decision. I sent him a message. This is going to sound strange, but I think our exes are connected in a way you should know about. If you're willing to hear something that might upset you, I'm willing to tell you. Either way, I hope you're doing okay after everything you've been through. Then I closed my laptop, took a sleeping pill, and fell into a mercifully dreamless sleep. The next morning, I left before Aaron arrived to collect his things. I couldn't bear to see him, to risk having my resolve weakened by familiarity or nostalgia. Instead, I went to a coffee shop and distracted myself with work emails until I received his text confirming he'd taken everything. When I returned home, the entryway was empty. Aaron had left his key on the kitchen counter alongside a handwritten letter I immediately threw in the trash. I wasn't ready for explanations or apologies. What I didn't expect was the message waiting for me on social media from Marcus Wilson. I think we should talk. Call me? He'd included his number. With shaking hands, I dialed. Hello? His voice was deep, with a slight southern drawl. Hi, this is Rachel Reynolds. I still used my married name, though in that moment it felt like a borrowed identity. Rachel. Thanks for reaching out. I've got to admit, your message left me pretty curious. I took a deep breath. It's about your ex-wife, Vanessa. And my husband, Aaron. They were married before. I know that much, Marcus said. Vanessa told me about her first marriage when we started dating. Did she tell you that my husband has been paying the mortgage on her house for the past 7 years? Including the entire time you were married to her? Silence hung between us for several beats. That can't be right, he finally said. We bought that house together. I made the payments every month until what? Until about a year ago, Marcus continued, his voice strained. Vanessa said she got a promotion and could handle the mortgage herself. It was right around the time she started pulling away from our marriage. I thought she was just asserting her independence. She wasn't making the payments, I told him. My husband was. From our joint account. Without my knowledge. Another long pause. Are you certain about this? He asked. I have the bank statements and the mortgage documents. Aaron's name is still on the deed with Vanessa's. Marcus let out a low whistle. Well, that explains a few things. We talked for over an hour. Marcus filled in gaps from his perspective. He and Vanessa had been married for 3 years. Things had started deteriorating about a year ago, around the time she took over the mortgage payments. She became secretive about her phone, stayed out late, and picked fights over nothing. Classic signs of cheating, which he eventually confirmed when he found messages between her and someone named Chris. I never suspected anything about the house, he said. I just assumed it was part of her settlement from her first marriage. She always kept our finances mostly separate. Aaron told me he was still paying because she fell on hard times, I explained. But her social media shows a successful business, trips, a comfortable life. Marcus laughed without humor. Her yoga studio barely breaks even. Her parents subsidize her lifestyle, always have. They bought her that car she drives, paid for her business startup costs. Each revelation was another blow to the story Aaron had constructed. Not only had he betrayed me financially, but he'd constructed an elaborate fiction to justify it. So what now? Marcus asked. Have you left him? I kicked him out yesterday. I'm still processing what happens next. I hesitated, then added, what about you? How long have you been separated from Vanessa? The divorce was finalized last month. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment downtown. Starting from scratch at 40 isn't exactly what I planned, but here we are. Something in his tone, a blend of resilience and residual pain, resonated with me deeply. "I know this is unorthodox," I said, "but would you want to meet in person? Compare notes? I have a feeling there's more to this story than either of us knows." He agreed without hesitation. 2 days later, I was sitting across from Marcus Wilson in a quiet corner of a brewpub in downtown Seattle. He'd driven up from Portland that morning, curious enough about our shared predicament to make the 3-hour trip. In person, Marcus was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and an easy smile that belied the circumstances of our meeting. He had the solid presence of someone comfortable in his own skin, despite recent heartbreak. "I still can't believe the coincidence," he said after we'd ordered drinks. "Of all the people you could have found online." "I'm not sure it is coincidence," I admitted. "I specifically looked Vanessa up after finding out about the mortgage. Your profile was linked to hers." He nodded. "Fair enough. Detective work. I respect that." I pulled out a folder containing copies of all the financial documents I'd discovered. "I thought you might want to see these yourself." Marcus examined them carefully, his expression darkening. 7 years of payments. That covers her entire relationship with me, plus some. "And 3 years of my marriage," I added. "About $150,000 of our money." He let out a low whistle. "That's a hell of a secret to keep." "The thing I can't figure out," I said, leaning forward, "is why? What does Aaron get out of this arrangement? If it were just about helping an ex through tough times, why continue for years? Why hide it from me? Why still have his name on the deed?" Marcus took a thoughtful sip of his beer. "Maybe they're still involved somehow." The possibility hung heavy between us. I'd considered it, of course, but hearing someone else voice the suspicion made it feel more real. "I don't know," I said. "Something doesn't add up. You said Vanessa was cheating on you with someone named Chris, not Aaron." "That's true. But who knows what else she was hiding?" We spent hours comparing timelines, behaviors, and inconsistencies we'd both noticed in our respective relationships. The more we talked, the more a disturbing pattern emerged, not of a conventional affair, but of manipulation and duplicity on both Vanessa's and Aaron's parts. "I think," Marcus said slowly as we finished our second round, "we should consider the possibility that they've been playing us both." "How so?" "What if they plan to get back together eventually? The house stays in both their names. He keeps paying the mortgage, building equity. You and I were just placeholders. Ways to build separate lives while maintaining their connection." The theory hit me like a punch to the gut. It made a twisted kind of sense. "Or maybe it's simpler than that," I suggested. "Maybe he still loves her. Maybe he always has." Marcus reached across the table and briefly touched my hand, a gesture of unexpected solidarity. "For what it's worth, if that's true, he's an idiot." I smiled despite myself. There was something refreshingly direct about Marcus, a quality that stood in stark contrast to Aaron's web of deception. As we parted ways that evening, we exchanged numbers and promised to share any new information. What had begun as a strange alliance born of shared betrayal had evolved into something that felt oddly like friendship. Over the next week, Aaron called and texted relentlessly. I answered only via text, and only about practical matters, bills, mail, his remaining belongings. He pleaded for a chance to explain more fully, to make amends. I maintained my distance, using the time to consult with a divorce attorney and begin untangling our finances. What I discovered in the process only confirmed my worst suspicions. The mortgage payments were just the tip of the iceberg. Aaron had been sending Vanessa additional money, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, categorized vaguely in our accounts as business expenses or consulting fees. All told, nearly a quarter of our household income had been secretly diverted to his ex-wife over the years of our marriage. When confronted via text, Aaron claimed these were loans that Vanessa was expected to repay eventually. He insisted it was all about helping someone he once cared for, not about ongoing romantic feelings. But the deception was so extensive, so methodical, that his explanations rang hollow. Meanwhile, Marcus and I continued to exchange information and support. Our conversations, which started about our exes, gradually expanded to include our lives, our work, our perspectives. There was something cathartic about connecting with someone who understood precisely the type of betrayal I was experiencing. 3 weeks after our initial meeting, Marcus called with news. "I drove by the house this weekend," he said without preamble. "Aaron's car was in the driveway. All day Saturday and overnight into Sunday." My heart sank, even though I'd suspected as much. "Did you confront them?" "No, I just observed. Didn't want to create a scene." "But Rachel, there's more. I talked to Chris, the guy Vanessa was supposedly cheating on me with." "You what? How did you find him?" "Small town, mutual connections. Wasn't hard. Turns out, there was no affair. Chris is Vanessa's cousin who was staying with us temporarily last year. She invented the infidelity as grounds for our divorce." I struggled to process this. "But why would she fake an affair?" "That's what I asked him. Apparently, Vanessa told her family that I had gambling debts and was becoming unstable. None of it true. She needed a sympathetic story to justify leaving me abruptly. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. She manufactured a reason to leave you right around the time she took over the mortgage payments." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "I think she and Aaron planned this. Get me out of the picture, create a clean break where I wouldn't ask questions about the house or finances." My mind was racing. But what about Aaron and me? We were still married when all this happened. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Maybe you were next. Or maybe they were planning to maintain the status quo, him with you in Seattle, her with the house in Portland, secretly connected financially." The betrayal felt even deeper now, not just a matter of hidden money, but potentially a long-term deception involving multiple lives being manipulated. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked gently. I considered for a moment before responding. "I want the truth. And then I want justice." The plan formed gradually over our next few conversations. It wasn't about revenge exactly, more about forcing accountability and creating consequences for their deception. Marcus, with his architectural background, helped me understand the legal aspects of property co-ownership. My skills in research and documentation proved useful in building our case. First, I formally separated all our financial accounts and documented every cent Aaron had secretly diverted to Vanessa. My attorney warned me that since these transfers occurred during our marriage, legally challenging them would be complicated. But documentation was power, especially in divorce negotiations. Next, I made an appointment with a real estate attorney specializing in property disputes. Since Aaron was still legally on the deed with Vanessa, and since he'd been making payments from our marital assets without my knowledge, I had potential claims on that property. Not a guaranteed win, but enough leverage to get Aaron's attention. While I handled the legal groundwork, Marcus worked his local connections in Portland. He discovered that Vanessa's yoga studio was struggling financially, despite her curated social media image of success. More importantly, he learned from mutual friends that Aaron had been visiting Portland at least twice a month throughout our marriage, far more frequently than the occasional business trips he'd claimed. 4 weeks after discovering the mortgage statement, I texted Aaron, "We need to talk in person. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. It's important." He agreed immediately, likely hoping this was a sign of reconciliation. I had something else in mind. I chose a quiet restaurant with secluded booths for privacy. When Aaron arrived, he looked simultaneously hopeful and haggard, his usual crisp appearance slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. "Rachel," he said, reaching for my hands across the table. I kept them firmly in my lap. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I've missed you so much." "This isn't a reconciliation, Aaron," I stated flatly. "This is your opportunity to tell me the complete truth before I proceed with divorce filings next week." His face fell. "I've told you everything already. Yes, I made a massive mistake hiding the financial arrangement with Vanessa, but," "Stop," I interrupted. "Let's not waste time. I know you've been visiting Portland at least twice a month throughout our marriage. I know you've been giving Vanessa much more than just mortgage payments. I know you stayed overnight at her house 3 weeks ago. Aaron paled visibly. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you're still lying. So here's your chance, tell me the truth, all of it, or I walk out that door and the next time you hear from me will be through my attorney. He stared at me for a long moment, then seemed to deflate. It's complicated, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I have all night. Aaron took a deep breath. Vanessa and we never fully disconnected. Not emotionally, not financially. Are you still in love with her? The question I'd been afraid to ask directly. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe part of me always will be. We have history. But it's not what you think, we haven't been having some torrid affair behind your back. Then what exactly has been happening? He looked down at his hands. When Vanessa and I divorced, we agreed to keep the house in both our names temporarily. The market was bad, and neither of us wanted to take a loss. She stayed there, I moved on. But then her parents lost most of their money in some investment scheme, and suddenly she couldn't afford to buy me out or pay the full mortgage. So you just kept paying it? For 7 years? At first it was supposed to be temporary. Then it became a habit. Then a secret I couldn't figure out how to tell you about. He paused. But I swear, Rachel, while we were dating and during our marriage, Vanessa and I were not intimate. Just financially entangled. Without my knowledge or consent. Yes, he admitted. I knew it was wrong to hide it from you. But Vanessa kept needing more help, business loans for her studio, money when her car broke down, help with medical bills when her mom got sick. And what did you get from this arrangement, Aaron? Why maintain such deep involvement in her life while building a new one with me? He hesitated before answering, a flicker of something, guilt? Fear, crossing his face. I guess. I liked feeling needed. By both of you. Vanessa made me feel important, like her protector and savior. You made me feel loved and respected for who I am now. So you wanted the best of both worlds, I said coldly. And you were willing to lie to both me and her husband to keep it. Aaron looked confused. Her husband? Vanessa never remarried. Marcus Wilson, I clarified. They were married for 3 years. She led him to believe he was making the mortgage payments on their house until last year, when she suddenly claimed she could handle it herself. Convenient timing, since that's when you increased your transfers to her account. The blood drained from Aaron's face. How do you know about Marcus? He and I have become acquainted, I said, enjoying Aaron's visible discomfort. We've been comparing notes. Turns out, we've both been manipulated by the people we trusted most. Rachel, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, I cut him off, my voice low but intense. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign an uncontested divorce agreement with terms that acknowledge your financial deception. You're going to either sell that house and split the proceeds with me as partial restitution, or you're going to sign your portion of the deed over to Marcus, who was making payments on it in good faith while married to Vanessa. That's insane. I can't just. Your alternative, I continued as if he hadn't spoken, is a contested divorce where I bring evidence of financial fraud, where Marcus pursues his own claims against Vanessa, and where both your professional reputations get dragged through very public mud. Your choice. Aaron stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps he was. The woman he'd married would never have delivered an ultimatum like this. But I wasn't that woman anymore. You're bluffing, he finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. I calmly pulled out my phone, opened my gallery, and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo of Marcus and me sitting in my attorney's office, papers spread before us. Try me. The terms of our divorce were finalized within a month. Aaron, faced with overwhelming evidence of his deception and the potential for public embarrassment, chose the path of least resistance. He agreed to a settlement that favored me financially and included signing over his portion of the Portland house deed to Marcus, who had a legitimate claim as Vanessa's ex-husband who had contributed to its upkeep. Vanessa, when confronted with the unraveling of her carefully constructed arrangements, reacted with predictable outrage and denial. But faced with potential legal action from both Marcus and me, she eventually accepted the new reality. She moved out of the house within 60 days, leaving behind a property that symbolized years of manipulation and lies. As for the house itself, Marcus decided to sell it and use the proceeds to restart his life. He offered to split the profit with me, given Aaron's contributions from our marital assets, but I declined. My settlement with Aaron had been generous enough, and there was something about a clean break that appealed to me more than squeezing out every last dollar. In the months that followed, Marcus and I continued our unlikely friendship. What had begun as an alliance of convenience evolved into something genuine, a connection forged in shared experience and mutual respect. We understood each other's wounds without explanation. We recognized each other's strength without having to prove it. 6 months after my divorce was finalized, Marcus took a job with an architectural firm in Seattle. Our coffee meetings became dinner dates. Our text exchanges became daily conversations. Slowly, cautiously, we built something new from the ashes of our respective betrayals. It would be easy to frame this as a revenge story with a romantic twist, the betrayed spouses finding love with each other, the perfect poetic justice. But real life is rarely so neat. Our relationship isn't about getting back at our exes. It's about recognizing in each other the honesty and transparency we both value above all else after having it so profoundly violated. Last weekend, as Marcus and I hiked along the Oregon coast, he asked what I thought the moral of our story was. Maybe there isn't one, I said, watching waves crash against the shore. Or maybe it's something simple, like trust your instincts or the truth always comes out eventually. He considered this as we walked. I think, he finally offered, it's about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. I smiled, taking his hand as we navigated a rocky stretch of beach. That's much better than what I was thinking. Which was? Don't secretly pay your ex-wife's mortgage. His laughter carried on the ocean breeze, authentic and unburdened. In that moment, I felt something I'd almost forgotten was possible, gratitude for the painful path that had led me here, to this place of unexpected joy and hard-won wisdom. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you, it rebuilds you stronger, clearer about what you'll accept in your life and what you won't. Sometimes the most devastating discovery becomes the most liberating moment. And sometimes, just sometimes, losing what you thought you wanted leads you straight to what you actually need. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If this story resonated with you or you've experienced something similar in your own life, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything? How did you handle it? Please share your experiences, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of personal transformation and unexpected connections. Until next time, remember that sometimes our darkest moments lead us to our brightest futures.